which brings us to a guy that the whole world has ranked too low.
Number 44, Sidney Moncrief.
So Sidney Moncrief is 4-time All-NBA second team, 1-time All-NBA first team. And nobody knows this, but now you do. In the 1980s, what two teams had the best records? You probably know that. You're like, the Lakers and the Celtics? Correct. What team had the third best record of the 80s? The Milwaukee Bucks. Did they have a bunch of stars? Nope. Marcus Johnson's a very good player, just made the Hall of Fame, and Sidney Moncrief. But so here's where we've got to give respect to defense. So Sidney Moncrief, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, while averaging 21 points per game in his prime. So this guy's giving you 20 points per game on better than 50% shooting. He's 6'4", and he's winning multiple Defensive Player of the Years. He was top 5 MVP voting once, 5-time All-Defense. He's the best player on a team that made the conference finals 3 times. And this is important. Much like we talked about with Dominique, here's who beat him in the playoffs. He got beat by Dr. J's Sixers 4 times, Bird Celtics 3 times, the Bad Boy Pistons twice, and Dominique's Hawks once. He also beat Dominique's Hawks 2 times. But Sixers, Dr. J's Sixers, Bird Celtics, and the Bad Boy Pistons, those aren't fair fights. And yet he was there, deep playoff runs, semi-deep playoff runs every year. So let's go through some of these playoffs. 1983, he swept Bird Celtics, averaging 23, 7, and 4, again, while playing all-world defense. And then that year, they played the Sixers. They were the only team to take even one game off the Sixers. The reason the Sixers didn't go fo the way Moses Malone said they would, Sixers, the 83 Sixers are arguably the greatest team ever. The only team to beat them was Sidney Moncrief's Bucks. That's 1983. 1985, I know we're not allowed to talk about this, but it happened. He averaged 27, 5, and 5 while guarding a shooting guard you might have heard of named Michael Jordan, beating them 3-1. That happened. People act like it didn't happen. It happened. How could it happen when Jordan was 6-0? Because we don't count the times he lost in the 6-0. Round 1, 1985, Sidney Moncrief guarding Jordan, 27, 5, and 5. His team wins 3-1. 1986, he had 23 in a Game 7 win while injured against Dr. J, an older Dr. J, admittedly, and a young Charles Barkley. And they beat the Sixers finally. 1987, down 3-1 to Bird, trying to beat Bird again, had back-to-back playoff career highs of 33 and 34 to force a Game 7 that they then lost. So I don't know how Sidney Moncrief, he averaged 21 a game for the prime of your career, and you win Defensive Player of the Year, and you beat Bird in a playoff series once, and you beat Michael in a playoff series once, and you beat Dr. J and Charles Barkley in a playoff series once, and you're on a team in the 80s that's relevant every single year, and yet you're not making the top 75 list? It's just criminal. Demonze, I know you have very strong Sidney Moncrief opinions. What's up?
I mean, this guy sounds like a good player.
Yeah.
But best player on a 3-time conference finalist puts you at top 50? I mean, Paul George did that.
Okay.
Are you really just trying to flex that you know older players?
No, I'm not trying to flex that I know older players. However, we must give respect to our elders that have earned it. And I understand the idea that he did the same thing technically that Paul George did, but he didn't. It's not the same thing as what Paul George did. And Paul George isn't a Defensive Player of the Year. And Paul George doesn't have the moment Moncrief had. And so he has been oddly forgotten to history. Again, I want to restate this. People are like, he never made the finals. What was the year he was supposed to? That when the Sixers were making them every year in the early 80s, or when the Celtics were making them every year in the mid 80s, or when the Pistons were making them every year in the late 80s. Like that's what you had to go through. You had to go through Dr. J and Andrew, Tony and Moses, and you had to go through Bird, McHale, and Parrish. Then you had to go through the Bad Boy Pistons. It was a stacked deck, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. I think he was the second most egregious omission of the top 75 list the NBA just released. As it happens, the very most egregious omission of the NBA's top 75 list is our number 43 player on our countdown of the top 50, and we will reveal him next week. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to get more from the show, and make sure to click the bell to get notified every time new content drops. Check out full episodes of What's Right wherever you get your podcasts, or just click the link in the description below.